Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School. I am, as always, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy, and my guest is someone who I have known literally for my entire professional career, maybe minus the first 6 days of it or something. She is an absolute rock star direct marketing expert. I don't even want to lead with saying graphic designer because I think it's unfair to her skill set to put that as a primary. That may be how many people know her, but the truth is she is a direct marketing strategist, a brand strategist, and I'm sure we're going to dig into all the ways that her agency helps folks, some of the things that people need to consider in their marketing to elevate the performance, to also be you more in what you do as a law firm owner or just general business owner, if you're one of those listening to the show. So someone I've known for a long time, the owner of Zion Graphics, Kia Arian. Kia, welcome to the show.
Hello, Charlie. So good to see you and be in the studio with you. Thank you for that terrific introduction. I'm looking forward to what we're going to talk about today.
Sorry, Kia, my mic, my side cut out for a split second there. Don't worry, I'm going to clip this little portion out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a breath for a moment so that way I can see the audio thing. It's weird. This is the second time this has happened in the last 2 weeks. It's making me anxious. But your side will have uploaded properly. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so Kia, let's kick things off with the, I'll call it now, the lofty, immortal question. What is one thing they don't teach you in law school?
I love it. The one thing, okay, so I didn't go to law school, but I've worked with lawyers for probably almost 20 years now. And one thing that is clear to me that they don't teach them in law school is creativity and innovation. And, they are, by the nature of what they learn in law, right? They are taught lots of tradition. They teach precedent. They give you, the lines. You have to color inside of them, and it's all very good and well for law, and you want that structure and background in the law. But when it comes to creativity and innovation and going outside the lines, I find that a lot of attorneys, it's hard to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. So that's what I see.
I see that as well, especially the kind of unleashing the creative and innovative self and finding opportunities to break convention. I think that's a big thing when it comes to creativity and innovation, is the idea of breaking convention and how do we do that. But I'm curious, so you have kind of an interesting background of how you got here that certainly includes you coloring outside the lines. So what got you in the direction of working with law firm owners?
So it's an interesting background. To abbreviate it, I went to college. I studied, my background's in computers, but I felt stifled. I had a great career working with the Hubble telescope. I think some people, know that. But I
actually saw one of your recent newsletters where you were standing with I believe it was the Toyota Celica that you bought early on. Yes. When you were working for the Hubble project.
That when I first got my job out of college with the Hubble, and the way I rewarded myself was I bought myself a red Toyota Celica with flippy lights. Like, who doesn't do that? I was so proud of that purchase. I bought it all by myself on my birthday.
Perfect.
So it was, but I followed that path of here's what to do, the next thing to do, and it served me well. And at some point, about 10 years in, I realized, and I think that's just the human journey, that you learned what you learned, and you want to expand. You want to do what you want to do in the way that you want to do it, and have a vision for your future. And not everybody's that way, and that's okay. But the entrepreneurial spirit that catches us. We get that discontent in us. And so that happened to me. And I decided, how I had all this background in computers. What am I going to do that I love, is creative, would tap into my creativity. And at that time, it was graphic design. And it was pretty straightforward to get a design degree and get myself, kind of buy myself a career. And that's what we did. We went into print and we got a print shop, and quickly realized that having a business, you need to learn to do marketing.
Mm.
And I didn't know what else to do but to talk about how we're the best and we're the lowest price, right?
Mm.
And
Because those two things always fit together, best and lowest price.
that's exactly right. And you know, so what I ended up doing, we had a really low point about 2 years into having our business, and we were doing the printing, I was trying to learn the marketing, I was trying to elevate the design portion of it, and we decided to send out a postcard. We didn't know what else to do, and we sent. We didn't really have any money to buy a list, so we Googled attorneys and accountants. At that time, they still needed printing, and so
Right.
we Googled. We got about 50 of them, and we mailed 100 postcards. Half of them came back, but one of them landed on the right desk, and that was Ben Glass's desk.
That's right.
He had recently, it had been 5 years since he had launched Great Legal Marketing, and he was looking for a local printer.
Mm.
I don't think my postcard like impressed him. It just happened to land at the right time. And,
That matters.
that matters, just staying in front of people in ways that, you're there when they need you, right? Like what we teach personal injury attorneys, when they need you, you're there. And so I met Ben, and I shared my story with him, and the rest I say is history. He helped me. He introduced me to marketing, direct marketing, and really how to build my business. And that was maybe 14 years ago. And I was close to closing that business and go find a job, but I didn't. Here I am.
Look at that. I mean, Ben is definitely a domino for a lot of people, myself included, and other guests I've had on this show. But yeah, you then dug into the world of Dan Kennedy, right? And Dan's one of the preeminent marketers around the world, quite frankly. One of the most prolific authors of marketing books, price strategy books, etc. And you've actually been Dan's designer on sales letters that he has created, designers for some really high level people. And I'm really interested in digging into what is it about the direct marketing space that you really got into, that drew you into that space, and how did you start introducing design into it?
So, just to kind of back up a little bit from how I
Yeah.
even moved into marketing, and what was really pivotal for me, and I think is important for your audience, for the attorneys, because we come into doing our trade, which for me at that time was
Mm.
design, print, whatever, or it could, the lawyers who come into legal. We come in and we do our work, we do the trade, and when we learn how to market, at some point we realize, if you have your own business or your own practice, we realize you have to tell people about it, and it's not enough. And even if you
Turns
happen to,
out.
yeah, like you have to tell people what you're doing, and at some point it's not enough to do the bare minimum of the business part of your trade, your expertise, your professional
Mm-hmm.
space. And it's there that you can, you kind of grasp, where do you go. And for me, I found it in the legal world. Like when I was learning, when I went to visit Ben and his conferences, what he was teaching attorneys. But I took
Mm-hmm.
those things and I put them to my business, which had nothing to do with law firms. I had a retail print shop at that time. And so that, to me, that's what I mean when we talk about creativity. Like you can see principles and ideas and you can adapt them to what you're doing. And even in marketing for attorneys, when they go and they learn these different ideas and principles and strategies, either other attorneys are doing or other professional practices or services are doing, how do you adapt them to what you're doing? And the most successful attorney marketers that I've seen have been able to adapt those in really remarkable ways and take a chance. And so just getting to that whole world can be overwhelming. So
Mm.
your question of why did you, what was it with direct marketing that that I found, and how did I bring it into what I do, right? So
Yeah.
I realized that I can't talk to the whole world. You can't, yeah, right? I mean, you can't tell the whole world. You really got to pick who you're talking to and cater your message to them. And direct response marketing felt the most aligned with that. If you don't know that it exists, you end up trying to talk to the whole world. And
Mm.
that's very frustrating. And I didn't want to throw away the visual aspect of it, because I do know that our our visual processing, um, our response to visual stimuli is very powerful. It's actually 75% of our, like they call it, your prefrontal, your cortex, your processing. 75% of it is through visual input into your brain. So you're
Right.
processing things you see without even realizing it. And so I always knew that was impactful, important, and I didn't want to throw that away. And by working with Dan Kennedy and other people in that world, I was able to bring, well, let's not make it all just ugly. Like, it doesn't have to be all ugly. We can do both, and be okay with it.
It's interesting because like graphic design is such a thing that's associated with the idea of a brand as opposed to direct response marketing, which when people hear that term, a lot of times they think of, say, an infomercial, right? Or they do think of these mailers that they get from real estate agents that are really basic and ugly at times. I'm really curious that bridge between being someone in graphic design where it's very brand oriented, seeing this direct marketing space, like what do you think is some of the best merger that you've created of those elements?
That's an excellent question, because it really does need to be merged, especially with how they're not two separate things. So let me just give you, I think some examples are probably
Yeah.
good. So one of our most popular programs that we have at Zine is the newsletter program, and um, and that you and it's a proven, like, right on marketing strategy. If you want to do print, I know that's something that you teach and you do. It's get
Yes.
the print newsletter out, and we can talk more about that. Send it. Don't send it to everybody. Send it to your select list or your house list and so forth. But there's different ways to approach that. So how do you it doesn't have to be this beautiful, like, I've seen beautiful, visually beautiful newsletters, but the content just falls flat.
Right.
What does that mean by the content falls flat? It's either not personalized very much. There's no invitation to engage. Let me put it that way. There's no
Mm.
invitation to engage. And when I say invitation to engage, it could be an ad, it could be an offer, even at the end of an article that says, "Hey, I'd love your comments. Here's how you can contact me." So the message and the content to directly cause that person to respond, right? Direct response, not always to sell, but really just to engage. And so then where does the design come in? It has to be inviting visually for them to come in. The offers should be clear, like, don't bury things,
Mhm.
little things like that. And then consistency, and if you're doing other things, and if they're looking at what you've mailed them and then they're checking you out online, or you're sending something else to them, there should be a consistency, similar to, if
Mhm.
you launch an offer and you mail it and then you email it, like, your offer has to be the same. You can't do two different things, right? Otherwise you're confusing your people. So that's how we bridge the gap with marketing and the visual aspect of it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You kind of tucked in there something that I think is really important, Kia, which is the two words are direct response, and it's not really one or the other, right? It has to be, first off, the marketing needs to be direct. I find one of the biggest mistakes in marketing is so many people want marketing to be a little bit standoffish, a little bit of like, hey, look, if you like me, cool, I'm over here and I got this cool vibe going on. If you want to walk in my direction, as opposed to direct marketing, which is like, I'm going to walk up to you. I'm going to start a conversation. We'll find out if we're right for each other. And if we're not, that's fine. I'm going to go talk to that person over there. And then the other side of that being the response element. That can be, sometimes people want to put out messaging that creates emotion, but then there's no outlet for what to do with that emotion. I know that in the lawyer world, you and I have seen a lot of lawyer marketing. A lot of it will kind of go with, even when someone gets into direct response, they either are so focused on the response or so focused on the direct. At least that's been my experience. What do you see in the lawyer world with marketing? Like, what are some of the corrections that you're often making for someone when they start working with you?
So it starts with what they're saying. So before you get to the offer, like
Yeah.
how are you presenting yourself to them? So the the biggest corrections that I make when lawyers come is fixing their messaging so that it makes sense to your prospect, so that
Mm,
it is relevant to them. Um, Sometimes there's like jargon that we have to get rid of
yeah.
in the legal world, or there's matters that they don't really know or care about. For example, I have one attorney who his primary message that he was going forward with is, we know how to fight we've worked with insurance companies, we know how to fight them.
Mm,
And the insurance companies have defense, lawyers for them. You should have a lawyer for you. I understand that. I think that's a perfectly fine message. But the
yeah.
first thing that someone is thinking about is, I need to get my life in order. I need my money. And so it's like, are you meeting them where they're talking? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is making it easy for them to respond and um, reach out to them in a way that it doesn't feel scary. So that's the corrections that we often make.
So on the messaging side in particular, like if someone's listening to this and they're going, okay, that, yeah, sure, my messaging, but they don't necessarily know where to start. Is there a way that they can at least look at their messaging and maybe do some level of self-evaluation on whether or not they're on the right track?
So I've found that it takes a lot of insight to dissect your message. and
Hmm.
and I speak from, even for myself, when I try to dissect my own marketing message for what we do, doing it by yourself, it feels like you're doing it in a vacuum. It's like you're in a jar looking out, and you really need somebody on the outside to give you that perspective of, is this really what your or problem you're solving? Is this really like what your prospect is thinking about? So for what, like, having someone to bounce ideas off of, I think is the one important thing. The second thing is, I talk about it in sort of three ways. What is the problem you're really solving? So there's like level one problem, level two problem. Level one problem is what they present with, right? Like, I,
Hmm.
got in an accident, or I need, this legal thing. That's the level one problem they present with. The level two is what that problem is causing in their life, right? What those issues, is it causing them to worry? Or are they out of money? Is it causing problems in their relationships? So what is it that level one problem is causing? So we go through this kind of level one, level two questioning, and then
Hmm.
it's like, what is your solution to them? Right? Level one solution, here's the immediate thing we do. But the level two solution is really the outcome they're really looking for. They got the money they need. They have the peace of mind they need. So does that help? Like, that's sort of how we frame it, so that they can start to dissect what it is they really do, what problem they're solving, what outcome they're getting, and who they're doing it for. So those three questions are the ones that we tackle.
You mentioned the word outcome in there, which I think is a really important word whenever we're talking about copywriting. Yeah, everyone's, or at least almost everyone, has heard the whole idea of features versus benefits, and I find people can kind of get stumbled up on that, especially in the lawyer world, because they don't think of it. Like, the example I like to use is a vacuum cleaner, right? Oh, this vacuum cleaner has 0.75 horsepower, right? It means nothing to anyone, but if it says we can pull the pet fur out of even the most stubborn couches, great. Now we have a benefit rather than a feature. But the word outcome, I think, is really helpful in the lawyer law firm space, because we can define the difference between selling the outcome versus the process. I see
Yeah.
a lot of lawyers try and sell the process, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's, hey, even a statement like, we fight for you. That's a very common statement. Fighting for someone is the process. You don't go out to fight for someone, you win the war. That's the outcome. They don't care about the fighting itself, it's the victory. that matters most. So that, I mean, takes us down like the copywriting space as well, which I think is really interesting. I think we're both deep students of that. So let's go into that space. I'm curious in what you've seen in the copywriting world, how it applies to law firms, and what you try and get firm owners and marketers in the legal world to work on with copywriting.
So let's categorize it into two types of copywriting. One is the copy that goes on their
Yeah.
website, right? And the other is the copy that they either put in their emails or their print marketing that goes directly to people that have already contacted them, right? So website for lawyers, like there's, I'm not a digital marketer, Charlie, but when you're more in this space than I am, it used to be, still is, lots of SEO. And
Yeah.
but it seems to me, just the way that SEO is these days with Google, it's all like, it has to be, the whole paradigm, even from 5 years ago, does not even apply now. So
Oh yeah. It's
yeah,
wild.
it is wild. And so I don't know much about the SEO part of it, but at least from the get-go, like for the front page of the website, when they come, the writing, that one message that they first enter into has to have this is this is what your life will look like after working with you. And so there's a lot of elements to that. We did one messaging for a workers' comp attorney that said, we help honest, hardworking people. I can't remember the rest of it, but it identified who he helps. And then we help honest, hardworking people, get the money they need, whatever it is that end outcome is. And that was the first thing that was going to be on his website. There was actually more to it. So there's that. But then in terms of writing, and I know a lot of attorneys, they busy. They don't want to write. They don't like to write. They don't know what to write about. And we can get into like the copywriting strategies and, outcomes, benefits, blah, blah, blah. But here's the how I help my attorneys write copy that really is no fail, and it gets them great copy that they can repurpose over and over again. And we call them success stories. So like what my one attorney that I was just talking about, he had terrific content that he was doing on his social media, on his website. I mean, everything, he was doing it all right in terms of that kind of marketing copy, but he was getting bored. He got bored of it. And he was like, I'm tired of talking about the 5 ways to deal with insurance companies and the 3 mistakes for a car accident and blah, 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 like over and over. How much can you say that? And he had another passion. He had other things he wanted to do. And so we went through our process for, really digging into what it is what do you really do and what is your passion? And what we ended up recommending for him is rather pull him away from all that copywriting, right? That content creation, and created a framework where he would collect, his firm, not even him, collects success stories from happy clients. And it's very specific, like, what was your life like before? What were the challenges? What were you afraid of? How did you find this law firm? What were your hesitations? What was the first big wow moment? So very strategic questions. We take all the answers to them, and they're really good answers when you ask them that way. We take their answers and we just feed it into AI. We fix it up. Obviously, there's human element to it, right? You can't just depend on that. And we create this amazing content that is like, here was my problem. Here's how it was solved. Here's the outcome. Here's my life has changed, over and over and over again. And that's the only content that they ever have to use. They can put it on their website. They can put it in their newsletters. They can put it on postcards. They can put it in blogs. So it's we call it like an exit interview, or we build it into their process. They use that. That's their content. That frees up the lawyer to write about the things that really matter to him. Like in this case, this attorney, he really was passionate about educating people about they were like the working class, blue collar, really how to stand up for themselves in their life.
Oh, cool.
Not just in legal, right? Just mindset. Like, here's what you really need to do to really be able to succeed in life. And so that freed him up to do that. So that's the approach we take to maybe not specifically copywriting, but content creation that has marketing value to it.
Well, there's such an important lesson in there, Kia, that I want to highlight for people who may have just not quite caught the meta level of it, which is you're talking about someone who got bored of their content. I think we see this a lot when it comes to marketing, is even marketing that is working well, we get bored of it because marketing has this creative side to it. And what ends up happening is we drop the marketing that we're doing instead of figuring out sort of what you talked about, which is how do I reframe it and not make it my problem anymore, make it someone else's problem to produce it, because we want to continue doing the thing that works. And now we can add a new layer to it. Now we can start, okay, now I'm going to focus more on talking about encouraging the blue collar worker, the pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, et cetera, as opposed to what I see way too often is people think that marketing is like a one-for-one replacement. Well, I have to stop doing that in order to do this. When marketing, in my experience, is entirely additive. It is, good, this is working for me. What's the next stack that I put on top of it? Great, now I've got that dialed in. Next step on top of that. When it comes to adding up marketing overall, kind of like suddenly and discovering a new question here, I'm curious, when you're working with a firm, what are some of the marketing strategies that you would want to see them stacking up in order to create a greater ecosystem of marketing?
I'm going to ask your question again.
Okay, yeah. So what would you want to see a law firm that you're working with stack up in terms of marketing strategies to create a complete marketing ecosystem for the law firm?
So there's so many like brilliant things here moving. And this conversation is moving where like what lights me up is there's that marketing that you do. At first it's like, I need to attract clients, but at some point it becomes about more than that. And it's really like the stacking up, I think, is a brilliant way to put it, because as you level up into creating a message that resonates with people, right? Creating a message that attracts people to your law firm. And I love the idea of it's additive. You don't take away. Of course, you're always looking and improving, and maybe, there's that, but there is this element of let's not throw away what's been working and building on it. What I add sort of on a bigger macro level is bringing in the idea of you do more than law. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing that's important to you, that really matters to you, that is you're passionate about? And how can you bring that now into your marketing message without losing the core marketing principles that work, right? You can't just talk about like fluffy, fun things, and maybe you can, but you got to have that basic in there. And so let me give you a great example of one attorney that I'm working with now, where we're building into this message. He's personal injury, and he's got some really good, he's got generational equity. He's been in the town that he's been in for generations. His father, his grandfather, they got a terrific reputation. So he has that he hasn't really leveraged in his marketing message. So we're doing that. But then as I was talking to him, he has this passion for mentoring people and for creating communities. And I've seen him do it. So mentorship and creating a community. And it's not anywhere in his marketing message. How can you bring your passion for mentorship and community building, of connecting people, into what you're doing, into your marketing message? So that to me is the next level. That's the layering of your message that keeps you from getting bored after 10 years of doing what you're doing, 15, 20, keeps you getting bored from doing the work that you're doing and doing things that you really enjoy. But not just that, it's really what you've been created for, and here's this amazing platform, and let's do that. Let's not be afraid. Let's take the risk to talk about things that are important to you. So that to me is the next level of marketing message.
I love that. I mean, and that clearly has been kind of a constant in the last couple of examples that you've used, is someone finding the message that is endemic to them. And this is not meant to be a plug right here, but I do, I get your emails and I see that one of the things that you do with people is you do kind of this brand discovery type of session. I'm really curious, within that framework, how are you helping law firm owners who maybe are reticent and want to stick to the business, right? This is the law. This is what we do for clients, very clinical. How do you pull out some of that, what is endemic to them personally that they would love to talk about?
It really is a questioning strategy. And you have a background and, where law enforcement or any background, the questioning strategy in sales, that's like pivotal. When you ask the right questions, you pull out answers that I find are like nuggets. They're like you're finding a diamond in the rough. And so the questioning strategy that I use, I've developed over time. The first time I developed this brand discovery, it really was a set of basic questions. And as I've studied and grown and added to my marketing and my human behavior knowledge, I've added questions. And based on my experience with how people respond, I've added, and refined those questions. And so it's a questioning strategy. I say in my marketing, like in my emails, they're hard, like they're not easy. And so that's why, you really, and I said that earlier on, you need to have someone there to bounce it off of. Now, if you're very disciplined with your mind, your thinking, your awareness, you can certainly do that and answer questions. But it really is the questioning strategy. And it feels like the first 2 to 3 weeks in, it feels like a big ass mess. I mean, you're like all these questions, these answers, these random facts that are that. And I tell people, I'm like, it's, you know what, we're on the right track. Like, I know it feels very random, but we're going to pull it together. I promise you. And so it's kind of pulling out a closet, dumping everything out, and then you find like a little treasure or lost, thing that you packed away. So I'm full of metaphors.
That's okay. I love metaphors, and I like mixing metaphors even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the final things I want to ask you about is, we talk brand, we talk direct response, and this is kind of a central thing here of, why can't these methodologies get along better?
These different, you meet with brand and messaging and visual, and
people are such absolutists at times. Like, it's all about just building your brand. It's about getting your name out there. And then sometimes the direct response people are so fixated on just the transaction, and they forget about each other's side of it. And it seems to me that you live at the intersection of these two spaces. So what can or should they be learning from each other?
What I find often is taking a risk, like the fear of taking a risk and doing something different. It feels more comfortable staying in a lane and just doing that rather than bringing in another lane or trying. And it is a risk, Charlie. I mean, you could venture out into this area and try to pull it into what you're doing, and it doesn't work. And you might have wasted time, you might have wasted money, capital, resources, whatever. So there's a little bit of risk involved. But I would say on the other side of that, if you calculate it and you say, well, let me pull in, this part and add this part and create a whole from these different things that I'm creating separately. What are you going to create? You don't know. And maybe there's not a roadmap for it. So that's where I find that, when people are unwilling to take that risk of doing something different than what they've been seeing. And the other thing is, people are unwilling to really open up, like be different and have a message that is not traditionally what is in those things. And that's what I try to push people towards, and is really have a message that resonates with who you are, even if it doesn't sound like what the traditional is, which is really what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to be unique. And so they kind of run into this like cognitive dissonance, like, well, I want to do what everybody says is successful, but now I have to do something that's different. And so it can feel scary. What?
Absolutely. Okay. So, Kia, last question that I want to ask you, and it's a three-parter. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
So I am reading a lot of selling books. So my favorite book right now
Mm,
I'm reading, I actually love, is called Spin Selling. Um, I can put the author in the show notes. It's called Spin Selling. It's for people who sell high ticket
hmm.
items, whether it's a product or a service, versus low ticket. And I think it's fascinating because the sales world has been taught this one model, but they never differentiate between low ticket and high ticket. And I love, and it's very research based what this author has done. So I'm like on my almost like second read on it. So I love that. I would recommend it. And this would apply for maybe professional service attorneys who's, like estate planners or business law or that type of stuff. But you know what?
Yeah.
It could be for anybody. So that one's good. And alongside of that, I'm also reading the Wolf of Wall Street, the guy who he
Jordan
developed.
Belfort.
Yeah. So that he's got. I'm listening to that and on Audible, and he narrates it, and he's hilarious. So I've enjoyed that. And what am I watching? All right, so I don't watch TV. I watch YouTube. And
Great.
one of my, this is gonna be weird, probably a little, one of my favorite channels that I'm obsessed with, Charlie, are these channels about NDEs, near death experiences.
Huh.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a movie out right now about, it's called The Afterlife or After Death or something like that. That it's just in select theaters. It's about people who've had legitimate, like they really focus in on it. I just think that the gap between the unseen, what we don't see with our physical eyes, and what we see with our physical eyes, I think it's closing. And what's fascinating
Interesting.
about these experiences that these people have is just what they bring into the knowledge of how the world really works. It gets into like quantum stuff, and I don't know, I love that stuff. So that's what I'm watching.
Uh-oh, you said quantum. We could go off on that.
I
Oh
know.
my gosh. I was just looking over some interesting stuff about quantum theory and the way that light works. If you have these two open gaps and the pattern that you see if you observe the space where the gap goes through versus the wall where the light is cast on, it's such a rabbit hole. We do not have time for it as much as I want to.
I know, another one. That's a different. That's my podcast. So the one I'm going to be launching soon. We'll talk about it.
Ooh, very good. I
Yes,
want to hear all about that.
it sounds
And
good.
then what are you listening to these days, aside from Jordan Belfort and his wild antics from Wolf of Wall Street?
Um, I started. So here's a funny answer. I started listening to pop radio, and
Awesome.
it's very good. I love a lot of the pop music, but some of it is just horrible. Oh my gosh, I have to literally turn off the radio and like with my
And
son
here's
in
the
the
truth.
car.
Every generation has terrible music. I hope everyone, I'm sorry, I'm going to vouch for that. The fact that every generation has terrible music. I don't care when you grew up. Every generation has straight up garbage going on.
Oh my gosh, do not remember how much like profanity. There was not profanity music when I was growing up, but
That has changed. Yes.
that was not. But it is now, and I started listening to pop music because I just wanted to be able to enjoy my daughter. She's in college, so I wanted to be able to enjoy some of the things that she enjoyed and be able to speak her language a little bit. So it's been fun.
See, I like that. I so appreciate that. I actually think there's a marketing lesson tucked away in there that if you are someone that's marketing to a generation that is different from you, make sure you absorb their culture, including their music, what
Yeah.
magazines they may have read, who were the major reporters, etc., of their era. So that way you can understand the perspectives, what brought them joy, and all the references that they may use. And you know what, Kia, that's the exact same reason that I will continue listening to new music as it gets released, because that's what my kids are going to listen to. And I don't ever want to be the dowdy old person going, music was better back when. As much as I love my 90s grunge rock, I will continue to progress myself going forward.
Amazing. I think that's terrific. Don't forget the
Awesome.
80s. That was a unique generation. That was my generation.
I'm doing my best to forget the 80s,
Oh
okay?
no.
Sorry, the 80s are such an easy target on music. Let's be real. It's just, it's such an easy target.
It is.
Uh, Kia, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time and wisdom.
I always love talking to you, Charlie. I hope we can do this again. And thank you so much. Yep. So good to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you all. And I will see you in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.